a little bit more skill and finesse than just
Jamie brought us food. Jamie brought it.
There's no information yet.
So that is, I think, a Ramiro's chair that's been
I can switch it.
adjusted.
Yeah, don't sit down because you're gonna sit
Okay.
low. Is we're
Okay,
is he not-
Ramiro's not coming.
Oh, okay.
No,
So then yours must be.
must be.
Can I have Ramiro's chair?
Sure.
I mean, if he doesn't need it anymore.
So Nicole, sit here. I put an extra comfortable chair because you guys are in here all day.
Thank you.
Good morning. This is the Board of County Commissioners. Board work session. It is Monday, October 2nd, 2023. It is 10:02 a.m. This session is set to go until 11:45. Then we will recess and we will come back at 1:30 and then go till 4:15. This is a hybrid meeting. We're at 3000 Pacific Avenue Southeast, room 110. For public virtual attendance, you may follow along on the Thurston County YouTube channel. I'm Carolina Mejia. I'm the chair of the board. I'll be in the boardroom shortly. Also in the boardroom, we have Vice Chair Ty Menser and Commissioner Gary Edwards joining us via Zoom, and he'll also be in the boardroom here shortly. And we are picking up with the 2024 through 2025 budget presentations. And we will start with the overview and forecast update. And we have the budget team present. And who am I passing this to?
Commissioner Mejia, I'll take it. Good morning.
Perfect.
Interim County Manager Robin Campbell here. And as you said, we are joined by the budget team and Assistant County Manager Rob Gelder and staff from the county who are supporting the procedures. So today kicks off the 2 weeks of budget presentations where commissioners will get a more in-depth view of the budgets that are requested by offices and departments. And I am going to turn it over to Nicole now. So pick it up.
So good morning. As Robin Campbell has mentioned, we're here to talk about the biennium budget. We will jump first into the overview of the budget as far as forecast updates. We'll look into the general fund specifically and the different revenue streams that we have coming in there. So first, I'm going to start with the PowerPoint presentation. For those who have a packet, it says 2024 biennium budget forecast update on the screen. And for those who are doing it electronically, Commissioner Menser, if you go into 2024, so go into the K drive, sir. And then the folder is 2024 budget development. Biennium budget, yep.
I'm with you. The top there, biennial budget development.
October presentations,
Yes,
week of October 2nd.
yes,
And it's 00,
okay,
and we'll go in that order there, 00, 01, 2, 3, and 4 for the beginning portion.
thank you.
Yes. And I'm gonna share my screen. One second. Okay, so we're ready. So we're gonna pick up on the forecast update. So the first thing that I want to talk about today is the schedule for this week for October 2nd. So we're going to meet, excuse me, jumping around here. There we go. Okay, so we're going to meet Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So on Monday, which is today, we're meeting at 10 a.m. We're going to do an overview, which is a forecast update on specifically the general fund. Then we will talk with some of our departments and offices. So as you can see here, we'll start with human resources, central services, and then information technology. We'll convene again on Wednesday to go over the commissioner office, non-departmental, some other funds. We'll get into the regional housing council. And then on Thursday, the coroner, sheriff, public defense, pretrial services. We'll get into the Thurston County Alternative Program and conclude this week on Friday with the auditor's office, the treasurer's office, assessors, and the courts, district court, superior court, and juvenile court. So departments and offices will have the opportunity to speak before the board and the public on their request for this year, their policy level request. All right, so jumping right into the forecast.
Is that
Yep,
somebody not, I mean, that's not everybody, right?
that is not everyone, that's correct. So the following week, we will have the remainder of the departments.
Got it.
All right, so jumping into the general fund forecast, I believe, what was it? September 11th, we met, and we talked about the general fund projection, and this is just an update from those numbers. Overall, I will say that the numbers have not changed very much. Our forecast that we presented at that time, seems to be holding steady. Our property tax, which, property tax and sales tax make up the majority of the general fund revenues. Our property tax is still holding steady at coming in 99%. We're collecting that, so no changes there. Our sales tax, as reported as of September, is still coming in about 2.6%. I believe we said 2.3% last time we met, so it is steady. Nothing has really changed from that. The only thing that I would mention here that has changed in this overall projection would be the line called transfers here. And last time we met, we had that there would be $200,000 sitting on the table. After doing further analysis on the public sector workforce, which is from ARPA money, we do think that we will be able to transfer that other $200,000 into the general fund, that we have sufficient expenditures to cover the transfer. So we have put that back into the budget. So now you have an additional $200,000 against your ending fund balance. And then the other update would be the expenditure line here. And so departments and offices have submitted their, through August, we call it a special financial plan update, where they have went through all their budget expenditures to figure out where they think they will end with the year. And based off of that, we have seen an increase, a decrease of $300,000. So it's attributed mostly to vacancy savings and what has been forecasted from departments and offices. And so I'm gonna move my mouse, and that is shown here. So this 125.9, now you'll see a decrease there of 300,000. So overall, with all that, we have an additional $500,000 that we think will go to the ending fund balance.
It's just not a lot.
Not a lot, so not a lot of changes. That's the overall story here, is that we haven't seen much of a change from what we forecasted.
Right. And Nicole is still projecting an ending fund balance of roughly 33.6 million,
Yes,
which is about where we were
that is correct.
when we reviewed last month.
And I'll just go to the next slide here, which is a breakdown of the expenditures by department and office.
Right. The reversions look pretty close to where they had been a month ago.
That is correct, yes, the reversions are still at around 4% we're projecting. And that's on this slide here. The last line, total expenditures, we're still a 4% reversion. Okay. If there's no questions, I'll keep moving forward. So we'll jump into sales tax. So this slide it may be very difficult to see all those bars, but there is posted online as well in your packet another printout of the sales tax numbers. This is 2008 to 2023, so up to September's numbers here. So we're seeing from September 22 to now, so year over year growth is about 4.5%. And then our year over year growth for 2023 is at 2.49%. So we're still holding steady with what we presented last time, which was about a month ago, with seeing this 2.2% increase in sales tax.
So the positive thing here today is that it's not deteriorating more than it already has.
That's a great note.
We were at 2.2%. It's slightly improved this month. We've got 3 months to go. But we really don't think it's gonna get better than 2.5%.
Right.
So it's not like these last 3 months are gonna come in gangbusters.
I'm trying.
Yeah, sadly.
And so this slide is speaking about the sales tax again, but this gives you the actual dollar figure that we actually got in September. And just a note again, that sales tax that is reported in September was actually earned in July because of that 2-month delay. Okay. So moving into property tax, so we focused on sales tax and now property tax, the two major revenue sources to the general fund. And the story is the same, that we're holding steady with what was projected about a month ago. So we got updated numbers from the assessor, and these are preliminary numbers. And the value of the new construction, I believe it increased like less than 1% from what was last reported from the assessor's office, which is not a substantial increase to what the property tax levy would be. As well as our total assessed value, I believe that also increased about a 1%. So our projected tax levy here is about $48.1 million. And there is not substantial change from the last number that we presented to you. And so this slide, the yellow here at the bottom of the slide is just a total assessed value at 60 billion, and that makes our rate 0.7996. The last time we met, it was 0.808, so there is really no change in the levy rate or in the property tax levy itself.
Everything's so flat.
Everything is flat, that is correct.
And that, I'll talk just a little about that really is the story of this budget this year, is that revenue's flat. There's no huge increase in sales tax. It's growing very slowly and anticipated to continue to grow slowly. Our property tax is flat. The total assessed value countywide is flat. The new construction is about the same as last year now. The property tax rate, flat. So even with the 1% that the board can increase the property tax plus the new construction, it does not even begin to cover our increases in costs, because costs are not flat. But revenue is flat. We're not seeing any real increases in money coming in from the state on shared revenue. There's no real increases we've seen in grants that go into the general fund. In fact, the one-time money from the pandemic and the Blake and other sources are now gone, so that's actually a decrease, but everything else that we rely on is flat.
But to say costs are not flat is a huge understatement. Costs are not just not flat, they're escalated because of all the different factors.
That's right. Inflation impacts county costs just the same way it does in your home budget, and revenue is stagnant, as many home budget revenue is. Go ahead, Nicole. Yes, Commissioner.
I didn't hear that you said, what's the rate of inflation that we're dealing with?
I haven't seen the latest CPI. I think it was at 4.
Oh, I saw something under 4.
Yeah, it's dropping. It's certainly not as high as it was a year ago. But it's still, inflation is still impacting county costs.
3.7% for the 12 months ending in August.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So that is the major components to the general fund. Assistant County Manager, is there no, okay. So that is all the info I have as far as the general fund forecast update. So I'll just go into basically a roundup of what I spoke about in the beginning on what's going to continue with the budget work, budget development. So this week, October 2nd through the 13th, is budget presentations. So this week ends on the 9th, if I'm correct. And then the following week picks up on the 13th. And so we'll have 2 weeks of presentations for the departments and offices. The end of October, we'll have a budget work session where we'll speak about the line items actually in the budget. We'll start going through all the policy level requests. Preliminary decisions will be made on October 2nd, preliminary 2 decisions, and we'll post a budget book November 20th with those decisions in there. December 4th through the 5th will be public hearings. The 6th through the 7th will be our final deliberations. with the 12th being the property tax levy certification and adoption on the 15th. So that's all I have for this morning as far as the forecast update. If there's any questions?
Any questions?
No questions at this point, thanks.
Commissioner Munzer?
No, ma'am.
And no questions from me, Nicole.
Thank you.
So that really is all we had for the morning session. It became quite short. Because there are no real changes from when we met a couple of weeks ago. We'd be happy to open it up to discussion if you'd like to have one. Otherwise, we would suggest a recess until this afternoon's presentations. Let's talk a bit about the presentations. We have distributed to every office and department a template that we've asked them to use, because as we've done in prior years, we know that it's easier for you to review the templates when they're somewhat consistent. So the templates have, it's an opportunity for offices and departments to talk about what's going on in their office, to tell you just a little bit about what that costs. So they'll have information about their funds, both the revenue and expenses. And if they manage any restricted funds, they will have a copy of the financial plan for you, the updated 10-year financial plan, so that you can see the sustainability of that particular fund or funds into the future. Then we've encouraged them to talk about challenges and opportunities in their offices and departments. And then they will present to you in a priority order, hopefully. We've asked them to put them in priority order, all of their policy level requests. So even though we know that you have very little money to spend, we think it's important that the offices and departments are given an opportunity to talk about what they need. So that is what's coming in the presentations. You are not going to be asked to make any decisions at this time. No decisions at all this week. But it is a great time to ask questions about what happens when this thing you need is not funded. Is a great question to ask. Ask about level of service. If you don't get this funding, or if you cut the way we asked you to, what happens to level of service? And remember, level of service is a little different depending on what that service is. So it might be days to get a permit out from the permit center, or it might be minutes stuck at a traffic stop, or it's, whatever that thing is, miles of road maintained, or time customers wait. I'm looking across at the auditor's office, time people have to wait to get their passports issued. Whatever that is, they should be able to describe the impact of either an increase in funding or a decrease in funding. So it's an opportunity for you to ask questions. We may not have answers on the spot, so the budget team will be working during that week in October when we're not meeting to follow up on questions you ask, and we'll keep a running idea of that. And then the other thing that we used to do was during the presentations, we would ask you to have your initial reaction on is this item high, medium, or low, as in absolutely gotta fund it, fund it if we can, or nice to have but not this year. So We haven't done the worksheets for you to score that way this year. Mainly because we don't have much money, so the budget team might take a little bit of time and get you the worksheets, but for today, again, it's an opportunity for you to listen, ask questions, and think about what you need to get to the decisions that you have to make later this month.
Madam Chair.
Go ahead, sir.
Robin, as we move forward on this, are we gonna talk about you're mentioning that, well, this would be good to have, and this is a necessity, and maybe this one isn't. But what about the reality from the budget team that oversees these dollars? And I think we're gonna need to hear from you, is there money to do any of this?
Yeah.
So
Thank you, Commissioner Edwards. I think that you've already heard from our team that there's not money. And what you're hearing this morning is that really hasn't changed. There's not much money. And when we talked about the forecast in mid-September, I had presented to the board a short list of things that we felt are the must-dos. But I think that it's important that each of you assess, as you hear from these offices and departments, what you think the must-do things are. Because your list may be very different than the ones that we proposed.
well, I guess
It's no
to
money for me.
counter that, we might think it's a must do, but if there is no money to must do, we need to know that
There's
each time.
right. So there's virtually no general fund money. And we also asked offices and departments to please be prepared. You all asked in the notice that Commissioner Mejia sent out for them to be prepared to talk about what they're cutting at these presentations. If we don't get to a certain level of budget cuts, that are offered up by offices and departments, that's going to put you in a very difficult position because you won't be able to fund even the must-dos, or you'll need to determine where you're going to cut. But as far as the must-dos, I mean, if we can come to an agreement on what is the absolute must-do, that helps us get to two things. The team is creative as possible on what we can do in other ways to fund them, or how much of it does really a must-do? Is there a way to reduce it down to an essential piece? As we were talking about when we were looking at the permit fund, maybe they don't need the big one-time deposit. Maybe they only need a small fraction of that for now. So we'll be able to talk about those things, but the team is always creative on other ways to pay for things, but if we know it's a super high priority, we're gonna look extremely carefully at options. But it helps us know how much we have to cut to fund the things you have to do. Yes, Commissioner Mintz.
If we, just theoretically, I mean, obviously, we're trying to go through a logical and, meticulous exercise to try to get the right cuts made based on the needs or the situations of the different groups. But let's just say, hypothetically, none of the offices or departments would tell us that they would cut anything, and the board had to do that. What is our level, what is our obligation in terms of level of granularity? Could the board just reduce all of the relevant budgets by a certain percent and then those offices can figure out how they're gonna manage? Or do we have to go in and eliminate positions specifically? Or like how much more detail do we have to do if we were pushed against the wall
Right.
versus just cutting across the board and saying, figure it out?
You have flexibility. What the law says is that the commissioners will adjust the numbers as you see fit. So that makes your authority very broad. You can do just a percentage across the board. You could say, we're gonna eliminate all vacancy, every vacancy that exists today, gone. You could, you could pick positions. You cannot pick people, because each elected official has the authority to select who they want to serve. But the board has authority over positions. So you could select certain positions to eliminate if you wanted to go that deep, or you could say, we're cutting, I've seen this done, travel, equipment, and supplies in half. I mean, you could get granular, but
But you don't have to get great.
no, you could just do something broad.
And on that point, since you talk about positions, can you remind us what that case what there was like a Mason County, the commissioners cut the sheriff and they got in trouble because they tried to say, you're gonna cut your detectives or you're gonna cut your, I mean, I think there was that's kind of the case that kind of defines that line between the board and what we can dictate gets cut. And I don't remember exactly the formulation that the court came up with.
I don't remember exactly the Mason County case. I know that there was a case in Thurston County about a year before I came to the county. It was settled out of court, so it never went through that process. But the Thurston County case was a matter of the board tried to identify specific people that would lose their jobs and issue layoff notices to those people. And this is why I'm saying you can't choose the people who will be losing their positions, but the law says that the Board of County Commissioners controls positions. So you have the authority to establish or abolish specific positions. And the law says that those positions can be filled with the concurrence of the board. So if you're, you can't say Deputy Smith is out, but you can say
One deputy
we're
position.
cutting one deputy position.
And what does that mean, filled with concurrence of the board? Like, so, I mean, usually the office and departments hire their people. We don't come and approve every
You
hire.
have, that's true, but you have given basically a blanket authority that if there's a vacancy in a position, offices are free to hire and fill that vacancy, and departments.
If we wanted to, we could make them
also,
come
but you
back to
could
us
do
to fill,
hiring
and we
freezes.
just don't do that.
Right. I personally, I know you've heard me say this, hiring freezes are extremely ineffective as far as savings go.
Well, thank you. I was gonna, and thank you because both of my questions were, in terms of, we're gonna be hearing all of this, but we don't really have, I guess I would want a little bit more specifics on the high, medium, low. And for me, like where I'm at is the extreme legislative mandated things that we have to do, because if not, something's gonna happen. Like I think that's a priority for all of us. And then like we can start discussing, it's just, it's gonna be, I don't know, I feel like difficult to really get into
the weeds of the high, medium, lows, right? And when there is no money, like there really isn't, that's the reality of it. And when I'm, I guess, hearing from offices and departments, it's like, you know, per RCW, so-and-so, we need to do this position because if not, we're going to be losing funding in some way or another, or just, I think that's even like a higher priority for, you know, than high. So I think that's kind of the first thing, Commissioner Mensah.
Just piggybacking on what you're saying, you reminded me of a conversation I had with the interim county manager about, I don't want the discussion about, because like every group you talk to, like, oh, we're legally required to do this, and we're legally required to do that. And I don't want that discussion to get confused because there's a difference between task and people. You know, the law may say this task has to be done, but the law doesn't say you need 7 FTEs to perform that task, and they have to be these levels, and they have to have this amount of supervision. Like, so somebody can say, I've got to do X task, but there's probably 15 different ways you could formulate that personnel wise, and how many people are doing it, and what, and how in depth you're doing that task, and I mean, you know, just meeting the you know, so I want to make sure that we're thinking it through in that way, not just saying, oh, well, if that task has to be done, then all the people that we have underneath that obviously have to be maintained. Maybe not. I mean, that's just the reality.
That's right, because I can show you, we've done 3 different studies in the last 15 years that show that everything the county does, almost everything, is mandatory.
Other than
It's
our
in the
parks, you
legislature.
said.
The
Live in our
parks,
parks.
yeah, the
We could
parks.
scrap our
Parks and
parks.
Fair.
And there was a year in 2010 when we were entering the Great Recession that Thurston County put a proposal on the table to eliminate the parks in this county. And the
People went crazy.
yep, they did. So, I mean, but that is your discretionary item.
I do feel that we're obligated to let the public know the why. And the why has a lot to do with, this is a 2-year budget. So for the last 2 years, what was the inflation rate based on whatever we use, Seattle CPI or whatever it is? I think we ought to put that right out on Front Street, that we're dealing with a situation and it's X, and revenue is projected to be X. I mean, and it makes it pretty simple for everybody to figure it out. But I think this, well, it's 3.5 or it's 4.2 over last year or last month or whatever it is. I think we need a definite figure, and if that figure is unpleasant, so be it. And I think that figure is closer to 15%. And that's what we're doing as far as trying to negotiate with our employees, being able to meet their needs. And the public has a right to know what we're up against. And then they can assess the blame wherever they feel is appropriate. I'm not saying we need to blame anybody. We just need to tell the truth. We need to get the truth out there so everybody knows the situation that we're trying to balance. So I would hope my seatmates would agree that we need that information.
So Commissioner, while I don't disagree, I will tell you that inflation factors are usually point in time. So we can tell you what they were at any given time. But they don't tend to be cumulative, and we'd be happy to create a chart to show what they were every time we could get them.
Well, I'm not the budget person, but I disagree with that. When you can tell someone that 2 years ago, the price of milk was X or the price of gas was X, and that equates to the real life stories that our citizens are dealing with every day. And so that can be cumulative.
I agree with that.
That's all I'm asking, is that we let the public know, not dance around it, let them know the hard truth.
You feel like we've been dancing around it the last year? We talk about it every day in every meeting.
Yeah, but we talk about it. And incrementally, the public isn't following us incrementally. They catch a little bit of this and a little bit of that. What
know
is
exactly what
what's the total picture?
But they know that, they pay,
Well, so what's wrong with saying so? That's all I'm saying. What is wrong with saying this is what we're up against? And, I mean, you mentioned the ending fund balance. I don't know, I think it was 32 million or something like that. And why is it that that can't be applied toward this shortfall? I mean, we need a certain balance to cover our rating schedule with,
Do.
you know, all that kind of stuff. So it all plays in. But I think we can have a very concise, encapsulated message, if you will. This is what we're up against. This is the reality. This is why we're not doing X, Y, or Z.
That's why we've been talking about flat revenue.
Yeah.
We have zero revenue growth. We projected this year 100 and just under, well, now 118 million projected revenue for this year, and next year 119 million. It's flat. Our expenditures this year are projected at 126 million, and next year we were asked for 146 million. That's not flat. So we've got to get our expenditures down, and we are indeed planning, even when bringing the expenditures down, we are planning to bring that fund balance down. We are using part of that $33 million fund balance to get us through the next 2 years. So we've been planning since we saw the peak of 40 million last year. We've been planning on a fund balance that comes down, just not quite so sharply as it is right now.
So on some level, it's kind of like drawing the parallel from county revenues and budget expenditures with our own at home, right? So we have a double income household. One is property tax, one is sales tax. But yet we're also experiencing the same inflationary factors because the cost of goods and services are going up. Those things that we as a government are buying are not too dissimilar from the impacts at home. So how do we kind of make that crosswalk so that it's maybe a little bit more understandable of the same pressure of increased cost and more of a fixed income, so to speak.
Okay,
So that's where we're at.
30 then?
1:30.
Yep, 1:30.
HR.
Okay. With human resources, we are in recess.
All right, have some snacks.